Hello and welcome to the Blood and Pigment YouTube channel where we talk about all things Blood and Plunder, the best pirate miniatures game on the planet. I'm your host Jason Klotz and we'll be talking about our experience at AdeptiCon 2024. This was our team's second year running both Oak and Iron and Blood and Plunder events at the convention. If you're not familiar with AdeptiCon, it's one of the largest miniature wargaming events in the United States. And it's a true spectacle that lasts over 4 days of gaming and is attended by over 9,000 people. It's an awesome convention and a great time to meet folks from around the community, and this year we were as ambitious as ever and hosted a wide range of narrative events, tournaments, and demos over the 4 days. So let's take a quick look at each of those now. First up on Thursday was the Blood and Plunder land narrative event, the attack on Panama. In 1671, Captain Henry Morgan led one of the greatest buccaneer expeditions of all time. With over 1,800 men and 36 ships, he sought out to plunder Panama. This battle was a small segment of that, meant to recreate one of the battles along the way. It features a mix of English buccaneers and freebooters engaging a host of Spanish, made up mostly of milicianos, but also supported with some Indios and Caballeros. We had 4 tables set up with 6 players each. Across the 4, we had 1 English victory, 1 for Spain, and 2 ties. And with over 700 Buccaneer and Spanish minis on the table, it truly was an epic fight and a great start to an epic convention. That afternoon, we had the Blood and Plunder land tournament. This is a 3-round, 90-minute event. Each player is paired in a Swiss pairing, and random tables are assigned. We had 24 players pre-registered, a couple dropped, but we had some new ones show up on the day of. It was 3 events: Encounter, which is pretty much a straight up fight; Breakthrough, where one team is attempting to break through the other's line and escape; and Take and Hold, where there is a specific objective on the board where you're trying to capture it and drive the enemy away from it. We had a wide range of players: 7 English, 7 Spanish, 5 French, 3 unaligned, 1 native, 1 pirate, and 0 Dutch. As a land tournament, that makes sense because the Dutch excel at sea, but overall, it was a good range and mix of forces. There wasn't a specific meta that stuck out or kind of skewed things in any way. Third place went to Andrew Vogel with his Church's Raiders force, which is kind of a sneaky, shooty type finesse force. Second place was Patrick Werner, who had the Swedish militia featuring a number of pikemen that threw a few folks for the loop. And in first place was Fernando Artega with his Spanish army force. Friday morning, we kicked off another historical battle, this time the assault on Charlestown. It's a historical based scenario featuring a Spanish and French allied force attempting to oust the British from Charlestown. In this scenario, the center of the board had a watchtower on it that was a objective. Forces were fighting horizontally along the table, where there were some on land, some in small boats in the middle, and then some heavier ships on the outside, trying to take control of that watchtower and secure the landing and move further into the city. It definitely played out differently on every single table. In some cases, it was more land focused, and other it was more sea. I know at least one of the sea tables, one ship got raked, and at least another one got its mast removed. And it was just an all-around chaotic event of bloody chaos. Again, it was split evenly with 1 English win, 1 Spanish, and 2 ties. So it felt fairly balanced overall. Shortly after that event, in a quick lunch break, Rufus Vane ran the Blood and Valor tournament, and I believe he had 8 players. Patrick Werner led a French army, I believe, to 3rd place. Brody took 2nd with an Austrian force, and our own Dan Carlson of Blood and Pigment came away with 1st place with you guessed it, a Russian army. My understanding, in true Russian fashion, he marched a bunch of Russian conscripts at his enemy and won the game by attrition. Congrats to Dan for attending his first Adepticon and winning his very first tournament. Of note, you should also check out Dan's recently released Russo-Japanese supplement for Blood and Valor. You can find a link to that PDF and a review of the module on deadmanschess.com. At the same time as the Valor tournament, we also ran an Oak and Iron and Blood and Plunder demos. Again, we were swamped and had to stagger the event a little bit because we were short staffed. Every single table was full, and every time we ran demos the entire weekend, it was swamped. And I want to send a special thank you out to Eric Goebel, Jaden King, and Tyler Stone for helping step up and run some of those demos throughout the convention. And on the Oak and Iron side, a huge thank you to Josh Shivak, who was an Oak and Iron demoing machine and ran 2 tables at the same time more than once, I think. This convention wouldn't have been as successful as it was without these guys. I appreciate you guys stepping up. That evening, we transitioned into the Oak and Iron tournament. We wrapped up the day a little late, but it was a great event overall. About half the field was new players who had only played the game a few times, and the other half was pretty solid veterans. So it was an interesting mix. It's a 75-point tournament with up to 6 ships, and this, I believe, was the first tournament I'm aware of that allowed ships of the line. And all but two forces had either a third rate or one of the new galleons from Firelock. We had a few players drop because the convention was running late, and I think people were getting a little tired again. But overall, the event went really well. I came in 3rd place as the Dutch. I ran 2 fire ships and basically a boarding force. Garrett Swader played as the Spanish, had 2 galleons, I believe. And Eric Goebel, who took 1st with the English, had a 3rd rate and a couple of smaller ships. You can get a breakdown of Eric's force and his games on timberandsail.com if you're looking for more information. Saturday morning was the last day of us running games, even though the convention extended into Saturday, and we opened with a banger. Vane's Escape from Nassau. This is historically loosely based on events. Woodes Rogers came over from England with the intention of offering a pardon to the pirates in the region. Charles Vane refused, and historically he launched a fire ship into the midst of the British blockade, sowing confusion, and then fled out the other end of the channel, escaping into the night. In this scenario, it's a what if Charles Vane had engaged the British and fought his way out. So it changes history a little bit, but it was definitely a fun one. It was completely sold out, and we had more people wanting to play than we had minis and tables available for. We set up 6 players per side, 3 on the English, 3 for the pirates. There was a fire ship featuring a little plume of quilt batting as smoke and some flickering tea lights underneath, and that worked brilliantly. It caused terror and panic simply putting those minis on the table. It was fun to see a lot of people just kind of pointing and plotting and figuring out how to handle the chaos of a ship on fire heading towards their battle line. Unfortunately, the event was cut a little short for some of the tables because it got into the AdeptiCon booking catalog as 30 minutes shorter than it was supposed to be. But I think it turned out well. Everybody had a lot of fun, and I think that was definitely the highlight of the narrative events. Special shout out to the Gaming Geek, a fellow YouTube content creator that participated in the event. Seemed to be having a good time. I hope he enjoyed himself, and we hope to see him again next. Running parallel to that Blood and Plunder narrative event was an Oak and Iron narrative. Wagers Action. Josh Shivak again was a hero in this one. I had to throw him into the deep end of the pool because we were 2 staff short on the Charles Vane event, and I had to focus on the Blood and Plunder event based on the crowd size, and I basically gave Josh the scenario and all of my minis 15 minutes before the game and told him to swim with it, and he definitely did. He took the ball and ran a great scenario from my understanding. It's historically based on an event in June 1708 where Charles Wager's fleet of 4 British ships was hunting the Spanish and encountered a Spanish treasure fleet of 14 ships on its way from Portobello to Cartagena before going to Spain. It featured 2 of the new galleon models from Firelock. And it historically was an interesting scenario where the San Jose um, took a critical hit to its powder magazine and sunk possibly the largest cargo load in terms of value in history, estimated between 17 and 20 billion dollars. The event played out pretty similar. The main ship didn't necessarily go up in a blast of smoke, but there was a fire ship in the force, and it rammed into the light galleon in the Spanish force and crippled it. And there was just a meaty brawl overall. I think over the course of it, the Spanish ended up losing too many ships and struck out on strike. If you'd like to get that scenario, it's available on timberandsale.com for free. Link in the description below. The final event we ran was the Blood and Plunder Sea Tournament. To me, this is always the highlight of a gaming convention or Blood and Plunder game. It typically draws the largest crowds simply because of the unique challenge of the game and the visual spectacle. We had ships from all ranges and all styles, from small Bermuda sloops all the way up to a couple of mighty galleons on the table. Lots of varieties in play style, including a couple of cheesy builds by myself and Christian Bush. We both focused on the cheap 3-point pirates and taking as many fire pots as possible. Christian pulled in 9 fire pots, I believe, and I had a force with 11. And so our whole objective was sail as close as we could and throw fire and sink the other ship as quickly as possible, which panned out. Chris took third and I took first. It's cheesy and ugly, I get it, but it's a competitive situation. Hopefully next year the rules for fire will be changed, and if not, we'll make sure that doesn't repeat itself, because I know it's not necessarily fun to be on the receiving end of that, even though I'm the contributor for the attacker. But it was a beautiful sight to behold as a whole for the tournament, even if some of the ships had little flaming markers everywhere. The illustrious Mike Tunez made his appearance, which was good. We got to ask him a couple of rules questions that even some of the veterans and pros couldn't answer. We talked about fire. We talked about some things that might need to be changed. I'm not going to mention subsections. Anyway, we had a good time, and the other scenario strategy of interest was the new Barco Luengo, which, as far as I know, this is the first time that ship has been featured in a tournament, and it was run by 2 players. Fernando Ortega, who won the land tournament and is always a competitive challenge, and Jaden King, who ran the Barco Luengo all the way to second place. He used a little bit different strategy than is available on other ships. He loaded the bow with chasers and used the sweeps to row in reverse and blast his opponents as they came to him. There were some great ships out there. Christian painted some ghostly pirates, and Patrick and Colin Tozer had some special Sea of Thieves themed ships, and they both showed up in costume, and they were a hoot and provided some much needed comic relief for the entire weekend. You can get more information on our tournaments and a more in-depth recap on our blog, bloodandpigment.com. You can view the top lists submitted by all players and an analysis of the force breakdowns and some of the meta that was used. Overall, we had an absolutely amazing time at AdeptiCon 2024. By our estimates, we served somewhere around 200 to 230 people, making Firelock Games one of the largest historical miniatures companies at the con. And hopefully in 2025, we'll be growing it even more. We have lots of plans to make things even better, and we are super excited about the convention moving to Milwaukee. Hopefully it will be a boon for everyone, not just the organizers. Having everything under one roof lets all of the historical events be in a single location rather than a separate building. There's more hotels, more parking, so it should all be good. And there's no longer a need to take a shuttle to get to the historical minis, which I know was a little bit of a problem for some folks. But next year we'll have all of the game systems, Blood and Plunder, Oak and Iron, Blood and Steel, Valor, and Crowns, hopefully all in the same building. And we'll be able to just really grow that community and meet some folks. And so we hope to see you there in 2025 and make it the best year yet. And so that's it for me. Oh, no, wait, I take that back. One more thing. We are just a few weeks away from the largest Blood and Plunder and Oak and Iron event of the year, the Summer of Plunder. If you're not familiar with it, the Summer of Plunder is a worldwide community event for players of Blood and Pigment and Oak and Iron by Firelock Games. It's a global campaign for players to interact and share pictures and stories and earn prizes while promoting the game in a cool and fun way. Basically, over a 9-week period between June 2nd and October 3rd, players will participate in game sessions that have unique weekly objectives to earn points for themselves and for their chosen nation. Progress for the campaign is tracked in an online dynamic map. So every nation will start with 4 locations, and each game that you play and log will help to defend a location you already hold or attack an enemy spot. And the weekly tallies from players' votes will help determine whether or not those territories are held or lost. Participation is super easy. All you have to do is play a game of either Oak and Iron or Blood and Plunder, fill out an entry form on bloodandpigment.com, and each game you enter earns you a raffle ticket for prizes. You can play as few games or as many games as you want over the course of the event, and every time you enter, you get to choose and affect the campaign map on where your attacks and defenses play out. Along with your nation's commander's decisions over the course of the war will determine who wins control of the Spanish Main. It's guaranteed to be a lot of fun, and there are a plethora of prizes for you to win. You can get more information for that on our Summer of Plunder headquarters link on bloodandpigment.com, or look for more info on the event very soon on YouTube, or join our dedicated Discord channel for Summer of Plunder this year, and join in the community as we play some of the best pirate games on the planet. And I think that is for sure all from me this time. And since Dan's not here, remember, keep your dice at the ready and the wind at your back. Yar har.